Right, now when we looked at the lesson in tree shapes, I promised you that I was going to do some of the trees in a little more detail and certainly using some colour. So the first one we'll have a look at is the weeping willow. First of all, you tend to think that the weeping willow might be just a plain old D shape, but in this case what you've actually got are, you get this brush, we've got 2 or 3 D shapes. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there, and there's another one here. In this one, for example, the fronds are still there, hanging over, but you can see that the tree trunk is much narrower and less stubby than the one I showed you previously in its summer guise. But what we're going to start off with is the long slender tree trunk and just some of the main branches. Now for all of these trees I'm going to use these same colours. We've got phthalo blue and ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, lemon yellow, yellow ochre and raw umber, and obviously we've got a bit of white. And we're going to start off by mixing this mix of raw umber and ultramarine blue and white. Right, now I've added a little bit of water to this mix for the trunk just to make it flow a little bit better. We can always use the glazing or the acrylic retarder, but sometimes something as simple as a little drop of water does the job just as well. I think that goes up a little bit like that. If we look at the picture, you can see a couple of these bigger branches. If I just stretch 1 or 2 of those out with the rigger, it's really only so that there's a subtle little hint of them showing in between the leaves when we come to actually add the leaves, and it really doesn't need an awful lot more. It's just to give that impression of the leaves or the main branches actually bending over with the weight of the fronds and the leaves. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. That's fine for now. We'll let that dry and then we'll add on the leaves and the fronds. Right, now you can see I've mixed 2 colours here, a dark green and a lighter yellowy green, and all I've used is the ultramarine blue and the cadmium yellow. For this you may be able to see a subtle difference in colour there. I've just added a little bit of white for some final highlights on the sunny side and the top of the tree. I'm just going to push in like that. So I don't want the whole of the brush head right up to the ferrule stuffed with paint. The technique now is to follow these upper branches, because if you can imagine a mop that's upturned where all the head of the mop falls back on itself, just like that. You can see now what I'm talking about. So we're going to start here, and using this we're just going to drag down like that, starting at the top with the edge of the brush and dragging over. We can use the edge of, or the top edge of the bristle brush like that. That brings a bit more paint down as well. Let's get some more paint on the brush for this area here. Okay, that's dried off nicely now. What I'm going to use now with the same brush is this lighter coloured yellow or yellow green. I'm assuming, by the way, that the light is coming from the top right, so we'll concentrate the light on those areas. And then finally I'm just going to go into some of this lighter colour, perhaps add a little touch more titanium white, a little of the cadmium yellow, so it's all together. You can see there, that's better. It's all together a brighter colour now. And I think you can see now that you've got quite an effective little weeping willow tree. We'll just add a little bit of the ground to that. Okay, I'm just going to go in with the round brush. I'm just reinforcing the fact that the tree is sitting in the ground, not on it. This is just to really get you started so you can see how easy it is to create what appears on the face of it to be an awkwardly shaped tree. You can see, I hope, that it's not at all difficult, particularly if you create something like my little homemade brush, specially adapted for creating whole forests of weeping willows. Right, armed with our fan brush, we're now going to have a little look at the palm tree. We're going to do this one, and the things I want you to notice here are that it's not just one flat greeny yellow colour, and we've got this light beigey tree trunk which is formed, or will be formed, of this titanium white and a little bit of raw umber. I've mixed 3 other colours for the leaves, and they're primarily made with the phthalo blue and both the cadmium yellow and the yellow ochre to give us 3 distinct colours. Right, the first thing we're going to attack is the palm leaves, and you'll see just how easy that is to produce using the fan brush. The first thing I'm going to do is take the darker green paint, and I'm going to push that in the fan brush as I did for the weeping willow. And we're going to start here. You can see the way I'm holding the brush at a slight angle, and I'm going to pull this round in a very similar sort of manner that I did here, but not quite as far, obviously. So if I imagine that's in the middle of the tree, and then I'm going to pull that round like that, and then while that's still wet, just going to very quickly drag that down. Right, I'm going to bring in some of the middle colour now. We'll bring that here. Brought in the lighter green paint. Okay, you can see I've done about half a dozen leaves there. What I'm going to do is just put one up at the top here, just to complete the picture, as if it's, well, I'll put 2, there we are, as if it's just getting blown slightly in the breeze. And that's fine for now. What I'm going to do when that's dried a bit is just put a little bit of that lighter tone on the some of the other leaves, just to give it a little bit of modelling. But while that's happening, or while that's drying, I'm going to paint in the trunk. And for that, I'm going to use the 1/2-inch flat brush. Right, now you can see for the tree trunk, the dark side, or the shadow side of the tree trunk, it's still quite light. I've mixed in titanium white, a little bit of raw umber, put some glazing medium in, and a little touch of ultramarine blue, like that. You can see it's not thoroughly evenly mixed, which is great, which is just what I want, because we do want some variation. So all that we're going to do is just from the tree trunk is just put on some colour and run it down like that. Now we're going to take some of that colour out and just stab down the tree trunk, just maintaining the shape of the trunk. And notice how it goes out to a more bulbous shape at the base. Near the top, if you have a look, there's all these little, I don't know, the dead leaves or the coconuts and what have you. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of dark paint, a little bit of yellow ochre, like that. I'm not going to bother too much because it's only an impression, but it's just stabbing in some dark colours like that here and there. Okay, this is pretty well dried off now. What I'm going to do is just put some lights and darks on the side of the tree trunk, and with that in mind, I'm just going to use some of that light beigey colour which we mixed from the white and the raw umber before, and just very simply, you see, by using the flat brush you can just put a little bit of paint on and drag it around. And then to get the other side of the tree, don't forget it's sunny climes that we're in, so we want quite a dark colour. And I'm actually going to use just a tiny bit of almost neat ultramarine blue. Right, I'm just going to complete the picture by just dragging that, that's it. And you can see you're starting to get that sort of crisscross effect. Okay, let's just add a little bit of beech now with some neat yellow ochre and a bit of raw umber stabbed into it like that. Neat raw umber for the shadow. Right, I've just mixed up some lighter yellow colour similar to what we used previously for the weeping willow, and I'm just going to throw that in here and there across some of the palm leaves like that. It's not completely covering them. Remember, it's coming from the sun. Again, we could go into a bit more detail, but I think you've got the idea, haven't you? It's very, very simple using a brush like that. If you haven't got a brush like that, then the 1/2 inch flat brush will give you a pretty similar effect. We'll now go on to the acacia tree, so let's have a look how that works. Okay, let's have a look at the acacia tree, and it's very, very easy to paint. You can see it's only really an upturned V. It's termed perhaps an umbrella shape in terms of the leaf clusters, which are very raggedy and straggly and flat. So again, all we're going to do is paint some very simple basic gnarled branches. I'm going to use this base colour that I've used with the raw umber and ultramarine blue, a little bit of white. You can see I've mixed some there. I've left some lighter colour for some highlights later on. And I'm actually going to use the rigger for this because it'll give me a natural, almost natural tendency to run side to side and here and there and all over the place, which is actually exactly what we want for this sort of tree. I think we have something out there like that. I'm not obviously going to follow it exactly, and I'm not worried about that hit and miss either, because that gives a nice little effect. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. I'm not going to mess around too much more with it because all of this is going to be covered by the umbrella leaf shapes. And we're going to come back to our old friend the raggedy fan brush, and again you can see it's a fairly washed out mix of light olive greens and a little bit more green there and sort of browns and what have you. So let's have a look at this colour here. I'm just pushing that in so that we get a fair amount on the brush. In fact, I think we'll have a bit of fun. We'll take basically whatever colours come in, and we've got about 3 or 4 colours on the brush, or 3 or 4 tones anyway. And you can see this effect that we're going to get. What you think of in terms of is leaf clusters. So you're going from side to side like that, just stabbing on simply like that. By keeping this brush flat, then you're almost guaranteed to get that half rounded lovely umbrella shape. Let's go into a little bit of ultramarine blue and brown. Gives us, mixed in with some of the remaining green that's on the palette, gives us there that nice dark shape, because you need to have some dark underneath these leaf clusters. Okay, I'm just putting on, I've had a little bit of white in now just to give a little bit of highlight, and I think what we'll do is to add in just a touch of cadmium yellow. You can see the way I'm just dragging that in there like that. In fact, I'll tell you what we'll do. I think we'll use this raggedy bristle brush. Now that we've got the basic umbrella shape, let's just see what sort of an additional or different effect that gives on the leaf clusters. So there we are. Oh yeah, that's perfect, isn't it? So you can see that sometimes just one brush isn't the most ideal combination on its own, but in combination with a couple of brushes you can get all sorts of wonderful effects. You can see this sort of thing that's naturally occurring down here, another little bit down there. Again, I'm going to have to force myself to stop, because let's put a little bit of dark green on here to get that sort of effect in shade against the bright dazzling sky. Okay, now that this is dried nicely, I'm using some of the light beige colour on the rigger, same as this tree trunk here, and I'm just dragging it very lightly. But because I'm using the tip of the brush of this long hairs, it goes very nicely in a hit and miss effect. And that's it really. Right, and to finish off, what I just wanted to do was put some smaller versions of these trees in, just in a single colour. The sort of thing that you'd very often get in the middle distance of a picture where you don't want all this detail. I'm using the small round brush here, the number 1 round brush, and you can see I'm just bringing those leaves out like that. And over here, if we use the same idea for the weeping willow, if you come over like that, take the paint off and then just drag down like that. There we go, and just drag that down to nothing, and then that'll give you the effect of these straggly leaves and fronds. Okay, and then finishing off with a little bit of a tree trunk. Put it on an angle if you like for a little bit of variety, just a little hint. And then finally we've got our acacia tree, perhaps even one even smaller. Almost as a little Y shape is all that you need to be worried about, and a little hint of something like that. And there we are, you've got 3 close-up detailed studies of the weeping willow, the palm tree and the acacia tree, and you've also got the same version, very much simplified, using the basic shapes to give you the middle distance equivalents.